I'm Pauline, 34, and as I stood in my wedding dress staring at the text messages on my fiancé's phone, I finally understood why my family had desperately begged me not to marry Jason. The red flags were always there waving frantically in front of me, but I was too blinded by what I thought was love to see them. The pain I could have avoided if I'd just listened still haunts me sometimes. My family saw the truth about Jason long before I did, and their desperate intervention came too late to spare my heart, but just in time to save my life. Before I tell you my cautionary tale, let me know where you're watching from. In the comments, hit subscribe, and join me as I reveal how ignoring my family's warnings nearly cost me everything. My story begins 3 years ago in Chicago, where I was working as a kindergarten teacher at Lakeside Elementary. I loved my job working with the kids, finding deep fulfillment in helping shape young minds during their formative years. Teaching was my passion, but my love life was a different story altogether. I had gone through a series of disappointing relationships, each one leaving me more doubtful about finding someone who truly understood me. There was Mark, who decided after 2 years that he wasn't ready for commitment. Then came David, whose idea of a relationship was seeing each other twice a month when it fit into his busy schedule. And Scott, who I discovered was dating 3 other women simultaneously. Each failed relationship chipped away at my confidence, leaving me wondering if something was wrong with me. My closest friends and family tried to reassure me that I just hadn't met the right person yet. My sister Hannah would tell me, "You deserve someone who values you for exactly who you are." My brother Luke was more practical, saying, "Better to be alone than with the wrong person." My parents, married for 35 years, simply encouraged patience. "The right person will come when you least expect it," my mom would say. I was trying to believe them. Then came Andrea's 31st birthday party on a crisp autumn evening. I almost didn't go, exhausted from a parent-teacher conference day, but Andrea insisted. "You never know who you might meet," she said, not knowing how prophetic those words would be. The party was at an upscale rooftop bar downtown with breathtaking views of the Chicago skyline. I was nursing a glass of wine near the edge of the terrace when a deep voice beside me said, "It makes you feel small and significant all at once, doesn't it?" When I turned, I saw a tall, well-dressed man with warm brown eyes and a smile that seemed to reach something inside me that had been dormant for a long time. "I'm Jason," he said, extending his hand. "Andrea's college roommate's brother." "Pauline," I replied, feeling an immediate spark as our hands touched. What followed was the most engaging conversation I'd had in years. Jason was a financial advisor at a prestigious firm downtown. He was articulate, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. When I told him about my kindergarten class and the finger painting disaster that had happened that week, he laughed in all the right places and asked thoughtful questions. "It takes someone special to shape young minds," he said. "Your passion for teaching is obvious." By the end of the evening, we'd exchanged numbers, and I went home feeling a flutter of excitement I hadn't experienced in a long time. Jason texted me the very next morning asking if I'd like to have dinner that weekend. I said yes, without hesitation. Our first date was at a small French restaurant with soft lighting and intimate tables. Jason arrived with a single yellow rose, saying it represented friendship and new beginnings. The gesture was simple but thoughtful, and it set the tone for what would become a whirlwind romance. Over the following weeks, Jason swept me off my feet with his attentiveness. He remembered small details about my day, sent spontaneous texts just to check how I was doing, and planned dates that always felt personal and special. There was the picnic at the Botanical Gardens with all my favorite foods, the surprise tickets to a Broadway show I'd mentioned wanting to see, and the weekend trip to a cozy bed and breakfast in Wisconsin when I needed to escape the city. When I introduced Jason to my family a month into our relationship, things seemed to go well initially. My parents welcomed him warmly into our weekly Sunday dinner tradition. My father, a retired professor, engaged Jason in discussions about economics and seemed impressed by his knowledge. My mother, always the observer, was polite but reserved her judgment, as she typically did with new people in our lives. Hannah, my younger sister and a psychologist, was friendly, but I caught her studying Jason with professional interest during dinner. Luke, my older brother, who worked in finance like Jason, asked several questions about Jason's firm and clients. At the time, I interpreted their interest as positive engagement. After dinner, when Jason went to help my father with something in the garage, Hannah pulled me aside. "He seems nice," she said, but her tone held a question. "He is nice," I assured her. "He's wonderful." Hannah nodded, but added, "Just take your time, okay? There's no rush." I brushed off her concern as typical little sister protectiveness. Looking back, I wish I'd paid more attention to that first subtle warning. As our relationship progressed, Jason began showing sides of himself I hadn't seen before. There was the time he snapped at a waiter for bringing the wrong wine, his tone so harsh that I felt embarrassed. When I mentioned it later, he apologized profusely, explaining that he'd had a terrible day at work, dealing with a difficult client who had lost a significant amount of money. "I shouldn't have taken it out on the waiter," he admitted. "Sometimes the stress gets to me." His explanation seemed reasonable and his remorse appeared genuine. I wrote it off as an isolated incident. Then there was his reaction when I had to cancel our plans one evening because one of my students was hospitalized and I wanted to visit him. Jason became unusually quiet on the phone, then said, "I guess these kids come before me, huh?" There was an edge to his voice that made me uncomfortable. "It's just this once," I explained. "Tommy's parents are worried sick, and I thought seeing his teacher might cheer him up." Jason eventually said he understood, but his distant behavior for the next few days told a different story. When he finally warmed up again, I was so relieved that I didn't question the pattern forming before my eyes. Looking back, these were the first red flags, warning signs of the controlling behavior that would later escalate. But at the time, I was too captivated by the good parts of our relationship to pay attention. The way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room. How safe I felt in his arms. The future he described for us sounded like everything I'd been searching for. I mistook his possessiveness for passion, his jealousy for devotion, and his need to know where I was at all times as concern for my safety. When friends occasionally raised eyebrows at some of his behaviors, I defended him fiercely. He was just protective because he cared so deeply. The truth was harder to face. I was so afraid of being alone again that I was willing to ignore the warning signs flashing right in front of me. Jason's proposal came on a snowy evening in December, just 6 months after we'd met. He had invited me to dinner at the same French restaurant where we'd had our first date. As dessert arrived, I noticed the server was unusually attentive, hovering nearby with a camera. When I lifted my spoon to taste the chocolate soufflé, I found a stunning diamond ring sitting atop the dessert. Before I could process what was happening, Jason was on one knee beside me, taking the ring and holding it up. "Pauline," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "These past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. I've never met anyone who understands me the way you do. You're the first person I want to talk to in the morning and the last person I want to see before I close my eyes at night. I don't want to spend another day not knowing you'll be my wife. Will you marry me?" The restaurant had gone silent. All eyes were on us, waiting for my response. In that moment, all I could see was Jason's hopeful face, and all I could feel was a rush of emotion. This handsome, successful man wanted to spend his life with me. After years of disappointment, someone was choosing me, committing to me. "Yes," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, I'll marry you." The restaurant erupted in applause as Jason slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me. It was a perfect moment, one that felt like it belonged in a fairy tale rather than my actual life. That evening after dinner, Jason suggested we drive straight to my parents' house to share the news. I can't wait to see their faces when they find out we're getting married, he said, squeezing my hand as he drove. I was so caught up in the excitement that I didn't stop to consider that my family might not share our enthusiasm. When we arrived, my parents, Hannah and Luke, were finishing their own dinner. Their surprise at our unexpected visit turned to shock when I held out my hand to display the ring. "We're engaged," I announced, expecting congratulations. Instead, there was a moment of silence that stretched uncomfortably long. My mother was the first to speak. "This is certainly surprising news," she said carefully. "Congratulations to you both." She hugged me, but I could feel the hesitation in her embrace. My father shook Jason's hand with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This seems rather sudden," he said. "You've only known each other for 6 months." "When you know, you know," Jason replied confidently, wrapping his arm around my waist. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Hannah and Luke exchanged a glance that made my stomach tighten. Hannah approached and hugged me, whispering in my ear, "Can we talk privately for a minute?" In the kitchen, away from Jason, Hannah didn't mince words. "Pauline, don't you think this is moving too fast? 6 months isn't long enough to truly know someone. You're a psychologist, not a relationship expert." I snapped, immediately defensive. "Actually, I am a relationship expert," she replied calmly. "And I'm also your sister who loves you. Something about this doesn't feel right." "You're just jealous because you and Daniel have been dating for 3 years and he hasn't proposed," I retorted, immediately regretting the words as hurt flashed across her face. "That's not fair, and you know it," she said quietly. "Daniel and I are taking our time because we want to be sure. There's nothing wrong with that." I apologized half-heartedly, but the conversation left a sour taste in my mouth. I had expected my family to be happy for me not to question my judgment. Back in the living room, I could tell from the strained atmosphere that a similar conversation had occurred between Jason, my father, and Luke. Jason's jaw was tight, and he kept checking his watch. "We should probably get going," he said. "It's getting late, and Pauline has school tomorrow." As we were leaving, my mother pulled me into another hug. "Just promise me you'll take some time with this engagement, sweetheart. There's no rush to walk down the aisle." I promised, mostly to appease her, but Jason had already mentioned wanting a spring wedding just 4 months away. The next day, I met my best friend Tara for coffee to share the news. Her reaction was similar to my family's, a mixture of surprise and concern. "Wow, that's fast," she said, examining the ring. "It's beautiful, but are you sure about this, Pauline? You haven't known him that long." "Not you too," I groaned. "I already got the 3rd degree from my family." Tara reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "We just care about you. Has Jason told you much about his past relationships?" The question caught me off guard. Jason had mentioned a serious girlfriend in college and a few casual relationships since then, but nothing significant. He'd said he'd never found anyone he wanted to commit to before me. "Not in great detail," I admitted. "Why?" Tara hesitated. "Andrea's roommate mentioned something about Jason having been engaged before. More than once, actually." This was news to me. That can't be right. He would have told me something like that. "Maybe you should ask him," Tara suggested gently. That evening, I casually brought up the subject while we were making dinner together in my apartment. "So, I was talking to Tara today, and she mentioned something about you having been engaged before. Is that true?" Jason's hand stilled as he was chopping vegetables. After a moment, he resumed his movements, more deliberate. "Who told her that?" "Apparently, Andrea's roommate mentioned it, the one whose brother you are." Jason set down the knife and turned to face me, his expression pained. "I was going to tell you, Pauline. I just wanted to find the right time." "So it's true?" I asked, my stomach sinking. He nodded. "I've been engaged twice before, Once right out of college to my girlfriend of 3 years, and again about 5 years ago. What happened? Jason ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. The first time we were too young. Caroline wanted to move to California for graduate school, and I was just starting my career here. We tried long distance, but it fell apart. And the second time, his expression darkened. Melissa, that's harder to talk about. She had serious mental health problems that she hid from me. When they surfaced, things got ugly. She became obsessive-threatening. I had to get a restraining order when we broke up. My heart went out to him. That sounds awful. I'm so sorry you went through that. It's why I was hesitant to get involved with anyone seriously again, he said, taking my hands in his. Until I met you. You're different, Pauline. You're stable, kind, caring. You're the first woman I've truly trusted since Melissa. Tears welled in my eyes at his vulnerability. He pulled me into an embrace, stroking my hair. I should have told you sooner, he murmured. Can you forgive me? Of course I forgave him. His explanation made sense, and his pain seemed genuine. If anything, his past made me more determined to prove that our relationship would be different, that I would never hurt him the way his exes had. What I didn't know then was that Caroline and Melissa would tell very different versions of these stories when my brother Luke eventually tracked them down. I didn't know that there had been a third fiancé, Andrea, whose existence Jason had completely omitted. And I certainly didn't know that the pattern of control isolation and financial exploitation that characterized all of his previous relationships was already beginning to take shape in ours. As wedding planning began, my family's concerns grew more pronounced. During a Sunday dinner, when Jason couldn't attend due to a work commitment, my father brought up his reservations directly. Pauline, we're worried about you, he said. This engagement seems rushed, and we don't know much about Jason's background. What do you need to know? I asked defensively. He's successful, he treats me well, he loves me. Does he? My mother asked quietly. Or does he love the idea of you, the schoolteacher who wants to believe the best in everyone? Her words stung because they hit close to a fear I'd been suppressing. Sometimes when Jason talked about our future, I wondered if he saw the real me or just a role he wanted me to fill in his life. You don't even know him, I argued. That's the problem, Luke interjected. None of us really know him, including you. 6 months isn't enough time. Their collective concern began to plant seeds of doubt in my mind, but when I shared these doubts with Jason, he had a ready explanation. They're just protective of you, he said, and maybe a little jealous that you're starting your own family now. They'll come around once they see how happy we are together. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, because the alternative was admitting that I might be making a terrible mistake. As soon as Jason and I announced our engagement and began planning the wedding, subtle changes started to occur in our relationship. The first sign came when we sat down to discuss wedding venues. I had always dreamed of getting married in the historic garden where my parents had exchanged their vows 35 years earlier. I was thinking we could look at Rosewood Gardens, I suggested excitedly. It's where my parents got married, and my sister Hannah had her engagement party there. It's kind of a family tradition. Jason frowned, scrolling through something on his phone. I've already put down a deposit at the Windsor Hotel downtown, he said without looking up. It's more appropriate for the guest list I'm working with. My clients and colleagues expect a certain level of sophistication. I sat there stunned into silence. He had made this decision without even consulting me. But the garden is really important to me, I said carefully. I've always imagined getting married there. Jason finally looked up, his expression softening as he took my hand. Baby, I know traditions are important to you, and that's one of the things I love about you. But this is our day, not your family's. Don't you want something that's just ours? Put that way, it was hard to argue. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being too traditional, too tied to my family's expectations. And honestly, he continued, the guest list is already at 200, mostly my business connections. Rosewood simply isn't large enough. 200 people, I echoed, surprised. I was thinking something smaller, maybe 50 or 60 people. Just close friends and family. Jason's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Pauline, this wedding is important for my career. These connections will benefit us both in the long run. Trust me on this. That became a recurring phrase over the following weeks. Trust me on this. When I wanted to include my kindergarten teaching colleagues in the guest list, but Jason said they wouldn't fit in with his corporate friends. When I found a simple, elegant wedding dress I loved, but Jason insisted on accompanying me to a second appointment and steered me toward a much more elaborate, expensive gown. When I suggested my college roommate April as my maid of honor, but Jason thought Hannah would be a more appropriate choice given that she was my sister, despite the growing tension between us. Each decision seemed to slip further from my control, but Jason was always ready with a rational explanation that made me feel small and selfish for objecting. He was thinking of our future. He had more experience with large social events. He wanted everything to be perfect for me. My parents noticed the changes during our increasingly infrequent visits. One Sunday afternoon, while Jason was taking a work call in the other room, my mother found me alone in the kitchen. "Sweetheart, is everything all right?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "You seem different." "Everything's fine, Mom," I said automatically. "Just stressed with wedding planning." She studied me for a moment. "That dress you showed me pictures of, the one Jason selected. It doesn't seem like your style at all." "He has good taste," I defended, "and he wants me to look beautiful." "You are beautiful," she said firmly. "And you should wear what makes you feel beautiful, not what someone else thinks you should wear." Before I could respond, Jason appeared in the doorway. "Ready to go, babe? I've got an early meeting tomorrow." On the drive home, Jason was unusually quiet. Finally, he said, "What were you and your mother talking about in the kitchen?" "Just wedding stuff," I said vaguely. "Seemed pretty intense for just wedding stuff." I shifted uncomfortably. "She mentioned the dress, that's all." Jason's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Let me guess. She doesn't like it. Your family seems determined to criticize every decision we make." "That's not true," I protested. "They just want to be involved." "Involved or controlling," he countered. "I'm starting to think they don't want you to have a life separate from them." This comment stung because it played into an insecurity I'd always had about my close-knit family. Were we too enmeshed? Was I too dependent on their approval? Jason continued, his voice softening. "I just want this day to be perfect for us, Pauline. Sometimes I feel like your family is trying to come between us." By the time we reached my apartment, I was the one apologizing, promising to establish better boundaries with my family. Meanwhile, the boundaries in my life were shifting in ways I couldn't yet recognize. As the wedding date approached, my brother Luke became more direct in his concerns. He worked in finance and had attempted to engage Jason in professional conversations several times, only to come away with vague responses and changed subjects. One evening, Luke called and asked if we could meet for coffee alone. When I told Jason about the invitation, his reaction was immediate and suspicious. "What does he want to meet about?" "He didn't say. Probably just brother-sister catch-up." Jason frowned. "I don't think it's a good idea right now. We have the menu tasting tomorrow, and you need to review the final guest list tonight." "It's just coffee, Jason." "Fine," he relented after a long pause. "But don't be late, and if he starts criticizing our relationship again, I want you to leave." The coffee shop was crowded when I arrived, but I spotted Luke in a corner booth, looking unusually serious. After brief small talk, he got straight to the point. "Pauline, I've been looking into Jason's background, and some things don't add up." My defenses immediately went up. You've been investigating my fiancé. Please just hear me out, Luke pleaded. His firm isn't as prestigious as he claims. In fact, there have been complaints filed with the Financial Regulatory Board about his investment advice. I shook my head. That's impossible. Jason's clients love him. Have you ever met any of his clients? Luke challenged. Or his colleagues? Has he ever taken you to his office? The truth was, I hadn't. Jason always said his office was undergoing renovations, or that client meetings were confidential. I'd never questioned it because I trusted him. Also, Luke continued, sliding a folder across the table. I found records of significant debt in his name. Credit card debt, personal loans. I refused to open the folder. I'm not going to sit here while you try to destroy my relationship. Jason warned me you might do something like this. Luke's expression hardened. He warned you. That's classic manipulation, Pauline. Preemptively discrediting anyone who might question him. I stood up, grabbing my purse. I need to go. One more thing, Luke said urgently. Has he asked for access to your finances yet? The question stopped me cold, because just the previous week, Jason had suggested combining our bank accounts to simplify wedding expenses. That's none of your business, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Luke must have seen something in my expression. Please be careful, Pauline. At least promise me you'll keep your personal accounts separate until after the wedding. I left without making any promises, but Luke's warning echoed in my mind. When I got home, I found Jason waiting, his face tight with anger. Your brother called my office today, he said without preamble. He was asking questions about my clients, my credentials. What, I didn't know he was going to do that. Didn't you? Jason's voice was cold. Seems like a pretty big coincidence that he ambushes you with accusations about my business and then calls my office the same day. It wasn't planned, Jason, I swear. He studied my face for a long moment. I think your family is trying to sabotage us, Pauline. They've never accepted me, and now they're actively trying to come between us. That night, as Jason slept beside me, I lay awake, torn between the man I loved and the family who claimed to be protecting me. What if my family was right? But what if they were wrong, and their interference ruined the best relationship I'd ever had? These questions kept me awake long into the night, but I wasn't yet ready to face the answers. The next day, I discovered Jason had been monitoring my email and text messages when he confronted me about a message from Tara asking how the meeting with Luke had gone. Why are you going through my phone? I demanded, shocked and hurt. I wasn't, he claimed. Your messages popped up while I was checking the time. Why are you hiding things from me? Pauline, what else did your brother tell you? The conversation devolved into our first major fight, with Jason eventually storming out. He returned hours later with flowers and tearful apologies, claiming his behavior stemmed from fear of losing me. Your family has been trying to turn you against me from the beginning, he said, his voice breaking. I'm just scared they'll succeed. I forgave him because I wanted to believe his explanation, because the alternative was too frightening to contemplate, because admitting my family might be right meant facing the possibility that I'd made a terrible mistake. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and despite my best efforts to ignore it, it was beginning to grow. 2 weeks before our wedding day, I arrived at my parents' house for what I thought was a casual family dinner. Jason had a client meeting and would join us later. When I walked into the living room, I stopped short. My parents, Hannah, Luke, and my best friend Tara were all seated, their expressions grave. On the coffee table lay several folders and what looked like printouts of emails. What's going on? I asked, though I already suspected. My father stood up, his face lined with worry. Pauline, please sit down. We need to talk to you about Jason. If this is another attempt to convince me not to marry him, you're wasting your time, I said, remaining standing. Please, my mother pleaded. Just listen to what we've found. Reluctantly, I sat in the empty chair facing all of them. It felt like an ambush, and I steeled myself against whatever they were about to say. My father spoke first, his professor voice in full effect. Pauline, we've been concerned about your relationship with Jason from the beginning. The speed of it, the way he's isolated you from us, the changes we've seen in you. But now we have concrete evidence that should give you serious pause. He picked up one of the folders and handed it to me. These are records of Jason's previous marriages. Marriages? I echoed, my voice faint. He told me about 2 broken engagements, but he never mentioned actually being married. He's been married 3 times, Pauline, Luke said gently. All brief, all ending with significant financial benefit to him. My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were copies of marriage certificates and divorce decrees for Jason Thomas Bennett. 3 marriages, each lasting less than 2 years. The most recent divorce had been finalized just 1 year before we met. This could be someone else with the same name, I said weakly. Hannah shook her head and passed me her phone. I spoke with his most recent ex-wife, Alicia. She sent me these pictures. On the screen was undeniably Jason smiling beside a pretty blonde woman in wedding attire. I swiped through more photos of them together, my stomach churning. She wants to speak with you, Hannah said. She said there are things you need to know. What things? I asked, though part of me didn't want to hear the answer. Hannah hesitated. She described a pattern of behavior. Charm, then control. Isolation from friends and family. Financial exploitation. Emotional abuse that escalated to physical intimidation when she tried to leave. Jason would never hurt me, I insisted, but my voice lacked conviction. There had been moments when I'd seen flashes of something dark in him, quickly masked but unmistakable. My mother leaned forward, her eyes glistening with tears. Sweetheart, you've changed since you've been with him. You're anxious all the time. You second-guess yourself constantly. You've stopped seeing your friends. Even your voice sounds different when he's around, smaller somehow. Her words hit me like a physical blow because they articulated changes I'd felt but couldn't name. I had been different lately, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering Jason's jealousy or disapproval. Luke opened another folder. I've also found evidence that Jason is deeply in debt. He's facing multiple lawsuits from former clients who claim he mismanaged their investments. His firm is actually a one-man operation run out of a virtual office space, not the prestigious financial advisory group he claims to be part of. The evidence was mounting, becoming impossible to dismiss. But the final blow came from my best friend Tara, who had been silent until now. Pauline, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you sooner. The room went still. Last month, when you were visiting your grandmother and Jason came to pick up your mail, he made a pass at me. When I rejected him, he said you'd never believe me if I told you that he'd make sure of it. The room spun around me. Jason had been unusually critical of Tara, recently suggesting she was jealous of our relationship, that she wanted what we had. He'd been planting the seeds to discredit her, I realized with growing horror. He's been having affairs throughout your relationship, Luke added. We have evidence of at least 2 ongoing relationships. I felt like I was going to be sick. Every revelation was worse than the last, and yet somehow deep down, I wasn't entirely surprised. There had been signs, moments of inconsistency, explanations that never quite added up. Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why would he do all this? Money, my father said bluntly. Your savings, your inheritance from Grandma Louise, the equity in your condo. You're financially stable, trustworthy, and caring to a fault. You're an ideal target. The word target cut through me. Had I really been nothing more than a mark to Jason? Had every tender moment, every whispered promise been part of an elaborate con? "You need to end this engagement," Hannah said firmly. "Today." My emotions were in chaos, ranging from disbelief to fury to crushing humiliation. How could I have been so blind? How could I have defended him so fiercely to the people who truly loved me? "I need time to think," I said finally. "There isn't time," Luke insisted. "The wedding is 2 weeks away. Vendors are paid. Guests are making travel arrangements. And Jason will have explanations for all of this," my mother added. "He'll tell you we're lying, that we've fabricated evidence because we don't want you to be happy." She was right. I could already hear his arguments, the way he would twist this intervention into proof that my family was trying to control me. "Pauline," my father said, his voice breaking, "we're begging you. Don't marry this man. He will destroy you piece by piece until there's nothing left of the daughter we love." I looked around at their faces, all shining with genuine concern and love. How could I have ever believed Jason's claim that they didn't want me to be happy? These people had supported me through every failure and triumph of my life. But extracting myself from Jason's influence wasn't as simple as making a decision. He had become entwined in every aspect of my life, and I knew he wouldn't let me go easily. "I need to be smart about this," I said finally. "If everything you're saying is true, confronting him directly could be dangerous." They seemed to collectively exhale, recognizing that I was at least considering their warnings. "We'll help you," Hannah promised. "Whatever you need." I nodded, my mind already racing through the practical aspects of ending my engagement. The ring I would need to return. The wedding I would need to cancel. The explanations I would owe to friends and extended family. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Meeting ended early. On my way to your parents now. See you soon, babe." Panic flashed through the room. We had minutes, not hours, to prepare for his arrival. "I'm not ready to confront him," I admitted. "I need time to process all of this to figure out what to do." Luke's expression hardened. "Then we need to make sure he doesn't suspect anything has changed." "Can you do that?" my mother asked worriedly. "Can you pretend everything is normal?" I wasn't sure, but I knew I had to try. "I'll do my best." We quickly put away the folders and printouts. Everyone tried to assume casual positions around the living room, but the tension was palpable. When the doorbell rang 15 minutes later, I felt like I might shatter from stress. Jason's smile faltered slightly when he entered the room and saw everyone gathered. "Family meeting?" he asked lightly, but I caught the suspicion in his eyes. "Just catching up?" I said, rising to greet him with a kiss that felt like betrayal. "How was your meeting?" "Productive," he replied, his arm sliding possessively around my waist. "But I missed you." The next hour was excruciating. We all performed a grotesque charade of normalcy, making small talk about harmless topics while avoiding any mention of the wedding. Jason stayed glued to my side, his grip on my hand occasionally tightening when the conversation veered too close to personal territory. When we finally left, I felt like I could barely breathe. In the car, Jason was unusually silent. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your family was acting strange," he said. "Especially Luke. Did he say something to you?" "No." I lied. "Everyone's just tired. Sunday night, you know." Jason grunted non-committally, but I could feel his suspicion like a physical weight in the car. When we reached my condo, he walked me to my door, but didn't come inside as he usually would. "I've got an early meeting tomorrow," he explained. "Need to prepare some things at home." It was a reprieve I hadn't expected, but desperately needed. As soon as his car pulled away, I collapsed onto my sofa, finally allowing the tears to flow freely. Everything I thought I knew about my relationship, my future, had been revealed as fiction. The man I loved was a carefully crafted illusion designed to gain my trust and access to my resources. That night, I made a decision. I would end the engagement, but I needed to be strategic. If my family was right about Jason, confronting him directly could be dangerous. I needed time and space to untangle myself from his influence. The next morning, I called Hannah. "I'm not going through with the wedding," I told her, "but I can't confront Jason yet. I need a plan." Together with my family, we developed a strategy. I would gradually move my important documents and sentimental possessions to my parents' house under the guise of cleaning before the honeymoon. Luke would help me secure my finances, creating new accounts Jason couldn't access. Hannah would help me draft a letter to send to guests once I was ready to officially cancel. But Jason's instincts were sharp. He noticed the subtle changes in my behavior, the increased phone calls to my family, the evasive answers about wedding details. His controlling behavior intensified his need to know my whereabouts, becoming more pronounced. 1 week before the wedding, he made an unexpected demand. "I think we should move your things into my place this weekend," he said. "No point waiting until after the wedding." It was a test, I realized. He suspected something was wrong and wanted to further entangle our lives before I could extract myself. "I'd rather wait," I said carefully. "There's already so much going on with the wedding." His expression darkened. "Don't you want us to live together? Pauline? Isn't that what getting married is about?" "Of course I do," I assured him. "I just think, timing-wise, it makes more sense to wait." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If that's what you want, but I need the extra key to your place, for emergencies." I knew giving him unrestricted access to my home would be a mistake. "The building manager doesn't allow extra copies," I lied. "Insurance regulations." Jason's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Right, insurance regulations." That night, after he left, I received a text from an unknown number. "This is Alicia, Jason's ex-wife. Hannah gave me your number. We need to talk." I hesitated, then replied, "I know about the marriages. What else should I know?" Her response chilled me to the bone. When I told him I wanted a divorce, he threatened to kill my dog. Then he emptied our joint accounts and disappeared for 2 weeks. "Be careful, Pauline. He doesn't handle rejection well." The ultimatum had been issued: choose Jason or my family. With a heavy heart but clear mind, I had chosen my family. Now I just needed to survive the fallout of that decision. The morning of what should have been my wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring day for a celebration that would never happen. I had spent the night tossing and turning, rehearsing what I would say to Jason when I finally confronted him with the truth. My plan was simple: meet him at the hotel where we were supposed to get ready separately, return his ring, and tell him the wedding was off. My brother Luke would be waiting nearby, ready to intervene if needed. I put on jeans and a sweater instead of the elaborate gown hanging in my closet. As I gathered my purse and the ring box, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Can't wait to see you walk down the aisle today. You're going to be the most beautiful bride." Guilt and doubt crept in. Was I making a terrible mistake? What if my family was wrong? What if I was throwing away true love based on misunderstandings and past relationships that had nothing to do with us? Then I remembered the evidence, the multiple marriages, the financial deception, the affairs. Tara's confession. The way he had systematically separated me from everyone who cared about me. The way I had changed, becoming smaller and less certain of myself with each passing month. No, I wasn't making a mistake. I was saving myself. I arrived at the Windsor Hotel at 10 in the morning, 4 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. Jason had texted that he was already in his suite preparing with his groomsmen. We had agreed not to see each other before the ceremony, upholding at least one tradition among the many he had dismissed. As I approached his suite, my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I raised my hand to knock, then hesitated, fear paralyzing me momentarily. What would his reaction be? The Jason I thought I knew would be hurt, confused. But the real Jason, the one my family had uncovered, might be dangerous. Before I could knock, I heard voices from inside the room, including a woman's laugh. Curious, I pressed my ear against the door. "She has no idea," the woman asked, her tone amused. "None," Jason replied, his voice casual in a way I'd never heard before. "Pauline's so desperate to believe someone loves her that she's ignored every red flag. Her family tried to warn her, but she chose me over them. Classic isolation technique." Another male voice chimed in. "How much are you going to get out of this one?" "The condo's worth at least $300,000. She's got another $150 in savings plus the inheritance her grandmother left her. Not my biggest score, but not bad for a year's work." I stood frozen, my hand over my mouth to stifle the gasp that threatened to escape. I had expected to confront Jason with evidence gathered by my family. I never imagined I would hear him confess his deception so baldly, so callously. "What about the prenup her brother kept pushing for?" the other man asked. Jason laughed. "I convinced her it meant I didn't trust her. Turned it around so she felt guilty for even considering it. Women like Pauline are so eager to prove they're not like other girls that they'll ignore obvious warning signs." "How long will you stay married this time?" the woman asked. "Year, maybe 18 months, long enough to legally establish co-ownership of assets. Then the usual playbook. She'll catch me cheating, file for divorce, and I'll make sure she feels so humiliated that she'll agree to an unfair settlement just to get it over with quickly." They were discussing my life, my future, like characters in a movie with no regard for the real person they were planning to destroy. The absolute callousness of it struck me like a physical blow. "What about the school teacher thing?" the other man asked. "Doesn't seem like your usual target." "Steady income, good benefits too, trusting for her own good," Jason replied. "And watching her get all excited about finger painting with her precious kindergartners is actually kind of cute. Makes me almost feel bad for what's coming." The woman laughed again. "Almost. Almost," Jason agreed, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. "Anyway, I should probably start getting ready. My blushing bride will be walking down the aisle in a few hours, dreaming of our perfect life together." I stepped back from the door, my whole body shaking. Anger, humiliation, and relief warred within me. I had come here questioning if I was making the right decision. Now I knew with absolute certainty that I was. But I also knew I couldn't confront Jason alone. Not after what I'd heard. I pulled out my phone and texted Luke. "In hotel. Heard Jason confessing everything to friends. Need backup now." As I waited for Luke to arrive, I noticed Jason's laptop sitting on a small table in the hallway outside his suite. He must have left it there temporarily while bringing something into the room. An idea formed in my mind. I knew Jason's password, had seen him enter it countless times. With shaking hands, I opened the laptop and logged in. His email was already open, revealing a treasure trove of evidence correspondence with divorce attorneys from his previous marriages, emails to what appeared to be current girlfriend's financial records showing transfers of money from his ex's accounts to his own. Most damning of all was a document titled Pauline's Strategy, which outlined in clinical detail his plan to gain my trust, isolate me from my support system, and eventually control my finances. It read like a predator's playbook, and I had followed it step by step without realizing. Using my phone, I quickly took photos of the most incriminating emails and documents. Then, hearing movement inside the suite, I closed the laptop and retreated around the corner, just as the door opened. Jason emerged, now dressed in a tuxedo shirt and pants, looking exactly like the handsome, successful man I had agreed to marry. The disconnect between his appearance and the reality of who he was made me physically ill. He noticed his laptop and picked it up, looking around with a frown before returning to the suite. I let out the breath I'd been holding. Luke arrived minutes later, concern etched on his face. "Are you okay? What happened?" I showed him the photos I'd taken. His expression hardened as he scrolled through them. "This is worse than we thought," he said. "He's not just opportunistic. This is calculated predatory behavior." "I know," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to cancel the wedding right now." "I'll handle it," Luke assured me. "Dad and I will contact the guests. Hannah and Mom are dealing with the vendors. You just need to get your things and get away from here." "Not yet." I said, a plan forming in my mind. "I need to confront him first." "Pauline, that's not safe." "Not alone," I agreed. "But I'm not slinking away in shame. I want him to know that I know. I want to see his face when he realizes his con failed." Luke hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be right beside you. And I've got 2 friends from the gym waiting downstairs just in case." With my brother at my side, I knocked on Jason's suite door. When he opened it, his practiced smile of greeting faltered at the sight of Luke. "Pauline, what are you doing here?" "It's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding." His eyes darted to my casual clothes. "And why aren't you dressed?" "The wedding's off, Jason," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. "I know everything." His expression shifted through confusion, concern, then settled on wounded innocence. "What are you talking about? What's everything?" I held up my phone, displaying one of the emails I'd photographed. 3 previous marriages, multiple affairs. The Pauline strategy document on your laptop. I heard you in there just now discussing how much money you plan to take from me. The mask slipped for just a moment, revealing a flash of cold anger before he composed himself again. "Pauline, whatever you think you heard or saw, you're misinterpreting it. Your family has been poisoning your mind against me for months. This is exactly what they want." "No," I said firmly. "They've been trying to protect me from you, and I should have listened sooner." Jason's gaze shifted to Luke, his expression hardening. "You did this. You couldn't stand that she chose me over your controlling family, so you fabricated evidence filled her head with lies." "The only liar here is you," Luke replied calmly. Jason stepped toward me, hand outstretched. "Baby, please. Whatever they've told you, whatever you think you know, we can work through this. Don't throw away our future based on misunderstandings and jealousy." I stepped back out of his reach. "It's over, Jason. The wedding is canceled. I'll be contacting all the guests personally to let them know what kind of man you really are." His expression changed, then, the charming mask falling away completely. The coldness in his eyes made me shiver. "You stupid bitch," he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea what you're doing. I've invested a year in you, and you think you can just walk away." Luke stepped forward protectively. "That's exactly what she's doing. It's over. You lost." "This isn't about winning or losing," I added, finding strength in speaking the truth at last. "It's about me refusing to be your next victim." Jason laughed, a harsh, ugly sound unlike anything I'd heard from him before. "Victim, please. You are living in a fantasy world where someone like me would actually want someone like you for anything other than your money. I did you a favor by giving you the illusion of love." His words were designed to wound, to make me question my worth. A few months ago, they might have succeeded, but standing there seeing him for who he truly was, I felt nothing but pity and relief. "Here's your ring back," I said, placing the box on a nearby table. "I've already contacted the hotel about canceling the reception. My family is notifying the guests." "You'll regret this," he threatened. I'll make sure everyone knows you had a mental breakdown, that you're unstable. Try it, Luke challenged. The emails Pauline found will make fascinating reading for your clients and the Financial Regulatory Board. Jason's face flushed with anger. Get out, he spat. Both of you. Gladly, I replied, turning to leave. At the door, I paused and looked back at the stranger I had almost married. You know what the saddest part is? Jason, I really did love you, or at least the person I thought you were. In the elevator, my composure finally cracked. I leaned against Luke, my body shaking with delayed shock and emotion. It's over, he soothed. You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore. But as we reached the lobby, we discovered Jason had one final act of malice planned. He had come downstairs via another elevator and was standing in the middle of the hotel lobby, which was filling with arriving wedding guests. There she is, he called out dramatically as I appeared. My mentally unstable fiancé who's having a breakdown on our wedding day. Heads turned, murmurs rippled through the crowd. My stomach dropped at the public humiliation he was attempting to inflict. Pauline has been struggling with paranoid delusions, he announced to the growing crowd, his voice thick with false concern. She's convinced I'm some kind of con man trying to steal her money. Her family has been feeding these delusions instead of getting her the help she needs. For a moment, I froze, mortified by the spectacle and the sympathetic or confused looks directed my way. Then I felt Luke's steady presence beside me, and something else strengthened within me the truth. I stepped forward, chin raised, voice clear. Jason is right about one thing, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. This wedding won't be happening today. Not because of any delusions, but because I discovered evidence of his plan to defraud me just as he's done to 3 previous wives. I held up my phone. I have emails, financial records, and a document Jason created called Pauline's Strategy that details how he planned to isolate me from my family, gain control of my finances, and eventually leave with as much of my money as possible. The murmurs grew louder. Jason's confident expression faltered. Anyone who wants to see the evidence is welcome to, I continued. I apologize for the inconvenience to all of you who traveled to be here today. There will be no wedding, but my family is hosting a gathering at our home for anyone who would like to attend. As I finished speaking, movement at the hotel entrance caught my attention. My parents and Hannah were walking in, followed by several other family members. They had come despite everything, ready to support me if needed. Seeing them, understanding the depth of their love and concern, I felt a wave of gratitude so profound, it brought tears to my eyes. They had tried to warn me, had faced my anger and rejection, but had never given up on me. Jason, seeing the tide of public opinion turning against him, made one last desperate attempt. She's lying, he shouted. This is all a setup by her controlling family. Pauline, baby, please, let's talk privately. This isn't you. But it was me. Perhaps more authentically me than I had been in the entire year I'd spent with him. Without another word, I walked across the lobby to join my family, leaving Jason standing alone amid the whispers and stares of the guests who were rapidly reassessing everything they thought they knew about him. As we left the hotel together, my mother's arm around my shoulders, my father and siblings flanking us protectively, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: grief for the relationship I had believed in, shame for how I had treated my family, relief at my narrow escape, and beneath it all, a glimmer of something unexpected: freedom. The wedding that never happened became a turning point in my life, the day I chose truth over illusion, reality over fantasy, and family over a dangerous pretense of love. In the days following what should have been my wedding, I moved back into my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. The humiliation of canceling the wedding was overwhelming, but the alternative, going through with it, would have been catastrophic. My family formed a protective circle around me, shielding me from the worst of the fallout. Luke helped me navigate the legal aspects of unwinding the wedding arrangements. Most vendors were sympathetic when they learned the circumstances, though I still lost deposits. My father contacted our extended family and close friends to explain the situation, sparing me the repeated emotional toll of sharing the story. Hannah, with her background in psychology, became my most constant support. "What you're experiencing is similar to grief," she explained as we sat in the backyard swing one evening. "You're mourning the relationship you thought you had, the future you had imagined." "I feel so stupid," I admitted, tears forming for what felt like the 100th time that day. "How could I not have seen it?" "Jason is a skilled manipulator," Hannah said firmly. "He's had practice. He knew exactly how to gain your trust and exploit your vulnerabilities." "But I chose him over all of you. I said terrible things when you tried to warn me." Hannah took my hand. "That's exactly what he wanted. Isolation is the first step in these kinds of relationships. You're not the first person this has happened to, and unfortunately, you won't be the last." As the weeks passed, I learned more about the extent of Jason's deception. Luke had continued investigating and discovered that Jason had been using a false identity. His real name was Jonathan Thorne, and he had a history of similar schemes in multiple states. There were ongoing investigations into his business practices, and 2 of his previous wives had filed police reports alleging financial fraud. "You're actually lucky," Luke told me. "You got out before he could do real damage to your finances." But the damage to my sense of trust and self-confidence was profound. How could I ever trust my own judgment again? How could I believe in love after being so thoroughly deceived? A month after the canceled wedding, I received a call from a woman named Diane, who identified herself as Jason's first wife. "I saw your story in the local paper," she said. "I wanted you to know you're not alone." She shared her experience with Jason, which mirrored mine in frightening ways: the whirlwind romance, the gradual isolation, the financial manipulation. Diane connected me with a support group for survivors of relationship fraud, where I met others whose stories echoed my own. "The shame is the worst part," said Monica, a woman in her 40s who had lost her retirement savings to a man using similar tactics. "You blame yourself for not seeing the signs, for being so gullible." "But we aren't gullible," countered Sarah, another group member. "These people are professional manipulators. They study human psychology and exploit it for gain." Hearing their stories helped me understand that what had happened wasn't my fault. Jason had targeted me specifically because of qualities that were actually strengths: my trusting nature, my commitment to relationships, my willingness to see the best in others. 3 months after the almost wedding, I felt strong enough to return to my condo. My family was hesitant, concerned about me living alone again, but I needed to reclaim my independence. "I'll be fine," I assured them. "Jason moved to Seattle after everything fell apart here." Luke confirmed it. That first night alone in my condo was difficult. Every creak and shadow made me jump, imagining Jason had returned for revenge. I slept with my phone in my hand, ready to call Luke at the first sign of trouble. But morning came without incident, and slowly, day by day, I began to rebuild my life. I threw myself into my teaching, finding solace in the structured routine and the uncomplicated joy my kindergartners brought to each day. Their innocent questions and observations often provided perspective that all the adult analysis in the world couldn't match. "Miss Pauline, why do you look sad sometimes?" 5-year-old Zoe asked one afternoon. "Sometimes grown-ups feel sad when something doesn't work out the way they hoped," I explained. Zoe considered this, then offered her stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Floppy helps me when I'm sad. You can borrow him." The simple kindness brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Zoe. That's very generous. My mommy says when you share your happy, it gets bigger, and when you share your sad, it gets smaller," she said, with the profound wisdom only a child could deliver. Out of the mouths of babes, I thought accepting Mr. Floppy with appropriate solemnity. Perhaps there was something to be learned from Zoe's philosophy. Gradually, I began reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my relationship with Jason. Many had noticed the changes in me, but hadn't known how to address them. Tara and I had several long emotional conversations about what had happened. "I should have told you sooner about him coming on to me," she said during one lunch. "I was afraid you wouldn't believe me just like he said." "I probably wouldn't have," I admitted. "He had me so convinced that everyone else was the problem." Rebuilding trust with my family was a gradual process. Sunday dinners resumed, though now with a deeper appreciation for the bonds we shared. My father, never one for overt emotional displays, surprised me by saying, "I'm proud of how you've handled this, Pauline. It takes courage to admit a mistake, and even more to learn from it." My mother was less reserved in her support. "You're stronger than you know," she told me, smoothing my hair as she had when I was a child. "You always have been." 6 months after the canceled wedding, I began seeing a therapist who specialized in recovery from manipulative relationships. Dr. Winters helped me understand the tactics Jason had used and why they had been so effective on me. "You have what we call a high empathy quotient," she explained. "You naturally try to understand others' perspectives and give them the benefit of the doubt. People like Jason exploit that quality." "So I should become less trusting, more cynical?" I asked. "Not at all," she replied. "Your capacity for empathy and trust is a gift. You just need better filters to distinguish between those who deserve that trust and those who don't." Over our sessions, we identified patterns in my previous relationships that had made me vulnerable to someone like Jason. My tendency to ignore early warning signs. My willingness to accept explanations that didn't quite add up. My fear of being alone overriding my instincts about someone's character. "Red flags look just like flags when you're wearing rose-colored glasses," Dr. Winters said during one particularly insightful session. "The goal isn't to take off the rose-colored glasses entirely, it's to recognize that sometimes a red flag is genuinely signaling danger." We worked on boundary setting, on trusting my instincts, on recognizing the difference between healthy compromise and unhealthy sacrifice in relationships. Slowly, I began to rebuild my confidence in my own judgment. One year after what would have been my wedding day, I organized a reclamation dinner at my condo, inviting my family and closest friends. I had redecorated the space, removing all traces of Jason and making it fully my own again. "I wanted to thank all of you," I said as we gathered around my dining table, "for seeing what I couldn't see, for being there when I pushed you away, for welcoming me back without judgment when I finally understood the truth." "That's what family does," my father said simply. "Not all families," I pointed out. "I know now how fortunate I am to have you all. When Jason made me choose between him and my family, he was betting I'd choose him. He didn't understand the strength of our bonds." "To bonds that can bend but don't break," Luke proposed, raising his glass in a toast. That night, after everyone had left and I was alone again in my condo, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for a long time. The experience with Jason had changed me, but not in the ways he had intended. Instead of becoming more isolated and dependent, I had reconnected with my true support system. Instead of losing faith in myself, I had gained new insight into my strengths and vulnerabilities. The pain hadn't disappeared completely. There were still moments when a memory would surface: Jason's laugh, a place we had visited together, a song that had been ours, and the grief would return briefly. But these moments became less frequent, less intense as time passed. I wasn't ready to date again, not yet. But I no longer feared the prospect of remaining single. I had learned that being alone was vastly preferable to being with someone who diminished rather than enhanced my life. As I prepared for bed that night, I caught sight of my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was changed from the one who had so eagerly accepted Jason's proposal a year and a half ago. There were new lines around my eyes, perhaps, but also a new wisdom in them, a hard-earned knowledge of my own resilience. "You survived," I whispered to my reflection. "You're still here, still standing, still capable of trust and love despite everything." And that, I realized, was perhaps the greatest victory of all. 1 year after what would have been my wedding day, I sit on my balcony watching the sun set over the Chicago skyline, reflecting on how much has changed. The woman I was back then seems like a stranger now, someone I view with compassion rather than judgment. She was looking for love, for connection, for a partner to share her life with. She just chose the wrong person to give her heart to. The healing journey hasn't been linear. There have been steps forward and backward, moments of clarity and times of confusion. But through it all, the unwavering support of my family has been my foundation. They saw what I couldn't see, tried to protect me, even when I rejected their help, and welcomed me back, without recrimination, when my world fell apart. My parents have shown me what true love looks like through their actions, not just their words. Their 36 years of marriage isn't perfect. They disagree, they compromise, they occasionally drive each other crazy, but it's built on mutual respect and genuine care for each other's well-being. It's the opposite of what I had with Jason, where control masqueraded as concern and possession pretended to be passion. Hannah and I have grown closer than ever before. As a psychologist, she's helped me understand the tactics Jason used to manipulate me, but more importantly, as my sister, she's reminded me of who I am beyond what happened. "This experience is part of your story," she told me, "but it doesn't define you." Luke took a more practical approach to helping me heal, focusing on rebuilding my financial security. He helped me create new accounts, change all my passwords, and set up monitoring to protect against identity theft. "The best revenge is living well," he advised, and that includes being financially stable. My relationship with my extended family has deepened too. Many of them had seen red flags in Jason's behavior, but had stayed silent out of respect for my apparent happiness. Now we've all agreed to a new family policy: speak up if you're concerned, even if it's uncomfortable. Love sometimes means having difficult conversations. The support group for survivors of relationship fraud continues to be a vital part of my recovery. Hearing other stories reminds me that smart, capable, loving people can be deceived by skilled manipulators. It wasn't a flaw in me that made me vulnerable. It was Jason's deliberate exploitation of normal human trust. The same qualities that make us targets: empathy, optimism, commitment, are actually strengths in healthy relationships. Monica reminded us during a recent meeting. We don't need to change who we are. We just need to recognize when those qualities are being weaponized against us. My kindergarten classroom remains my happy place, where the simple wisdom of 5-year-olds puts life into perspective daily. When I told them I was sad because someone I trusted had broken a promise, one little boy solemnly informed me, "When my big brother breaks a promise, my mom says he's in the doghouse and doesn't get dessert." If only adult consequences were so straightforward. Teaching has always been my passion, but now it feels like more than a job. It's a calling to help shape young minds to recognize their own worth. I've subtly incorporated lessons about healthy friendships into our classroom activities, hoping to plant early seeds of understanding about respect and boundaries. The condo that once felt tainted by Jason's presence has been fully reclaimed. I've redecorated with colors and styles that reflect my personality, not what Jason deemed appropriate for a financial advisor's wife. The blues and greens that he dismissed as too casual now fill my living space, creating a calm sanctuary that feels entirely my own. Dating again still feels like a distant possibility rather than an immediate goal. Dr. Winters assures me this is normal and healthy. You're not swearing off relationships, she pointed out in our last session. You're giving yourself time to heal and learn before trying again. When I do eventually return to dating, I'll approach it differently. I've created a list of non-negotiable red flags based on my experience with Jason. Things I won't overlook or explain away controlling behavior disguised as care isolation. Tactics, inconsistent stories, pressure to move too quickly, dismissal of my concerns. I've also developed a deeper understanding of what true partnership should look like. It's not about grand gestures or intense passion that burns hot and fast. It's about consistent respect, mutual growth, shared values, and the freedom to remain connected to the people and activities that make you who you are. Perhaps most importantly, I've learned to trust myself again. To listen to that quiet voice of intuition that whispers when something doesn't feel right. Jason worked hard to silence that voice, to make me doubt my own perceptions. Never again will I allow someone to come between me and my inner wisdom. The painful experience of almost marrying a manipulator has transformed me in ways I never anticipated. I'm more discerning, but not cynical, more self-reliant, but not closed off, more aware of darkness, but still committed to seeking light. I've learned that you can be both trusting and cautious, both loving and protective of yourself. My family's desperate pleas for me not to marry Jason turned out to be the greatest act of love they could have offered. Though I couldn't hear them at the time, their voices eventually broke through the fog of manipulation and saved me from a future of systematic exploitation and heartbreak. If you're watching this and recognize elements of my story in your own relationship, please know you're not alone. Trust the people who have loved you consistently throughout your life. Listen when they express concerns, even if it's painful to hear. And remember that no matter how much you've invested in a relationship, you always have the right to walk away if it doesn't feel right. Has anyone in your family ever tried to warn you about a relationship, and were they right? Share your experience in the comments below. And if you found this story helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes, the stories that are hardest to tell are the ones that most need to be heard. Thank you for listening to mine.